Hello, welcome to the July 11th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I am the host of the livestream. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can submit questions in the live chat field or simply submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, especially if it's a little more involved. Let me mute my other monitoring computer. So once again, you can submit questions to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner can soon be eclipsed by the number of questions, and I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up as we have more questions and as more people get logged in. So if you don't see an immediate response to your particular question, what you could do is, if we could try to refrain from repeating the question, that would be appreciated. It just makes it longer, and then we're not able to get through as many questions. And when asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase that you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number that you're using. So if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system, that information is always helpful. We should have an index of all the topics discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps, so you could quickly navigate to different sections and find particular topics. So you can look for that, and if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website for us. Also, we want to give special thanks to our two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of help out to make it a better community. We want to give special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude. Also, we want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. It's a lot of really wonderful information compiled to help out anyone creating music on their computer, and especially for Steinberg customers and the Steinberg community. So it takes a lot of effort compiling all the information. So we give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his efforts with that. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg products, and I'm the host of the live stream. I'm presenting from in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching the live stream, live, or even if you're not watching live, you could still kind of just introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world joining on the live stream. And with that, we will go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that are starting to come in. All right, so we see Uno Memento checking in from Finland. We have Stefan checking in from Sweden. And we have Stefan saying hi to Uno. All right, so we see Dallas LaRue asks, I've seen there are plugins that will put drums in audience or drummer's perspective. What is the easiest way to do that in Cubase or Groove Agent? So I guess this is with like panning for toms. So, it kind of goes back and forth through, most engineers and producers will have it from the audience perspective, and then you have producers and engineers or drummers that want to hear it from the drummer's perspective. So like if it's a right-handed drummer, that the toms will be kind of panned accordingly, like going from higher pitch to lower pitch, where the hi-hat is kind of panned, like the left ear of the drummer versus the right, where it may be a little more on the right of an audience member. So let's say if we wanted to come over, and if we have just a pattern playing here. All right, so when we look at our hi-hat, so let's listen to our hi-hat, we'll probably see that this is being picked up in overheads as well. But let's take a look at our tom instruments, and we'll just kind of check our particular panning. So some drum libraries will automatically be kind of pre-panned. So once you're here, if it's some of the kits will be kind of pre-designed, especially in like the acoustic agent kits. But let's say if I wanted to come here to this particular tom, and we can hear how that's kind of panned. That's probably the floor tom, and that's going to be panned more to the from the audience perspective. But let's go over to the kit itself, and let's edit the kit and see if we could actually just... So we can see that those will follow the panning from the audience perspective, which is generally the proper way of doing it. And I think that in the acoustic agent kits, these might be fixed because of the phase relationships of the other samples. If it's let's say another kit where we wanted to, and I know this won't be like an acoustic kit per se, but if I wanted to have particular toms or different areas or different drum sounds, if it's a beat agent kit, I could just come over here and say, okay, I want this particular sound to be panned all the way in the opposite way. But a lot of the acoustic agent kits are kind of pre-baked in because of how they are sampled, because this, when we click on this particular floor tom, this also is being picked up slightly in the different microphones, and all that bleed so that we get the room mics as well as the ambient mics will be carried over. So that's why, when we hit this tom, you could actually, it's being kind of blended in with multiple sources. So if we wanted to come here and say, okay, I want more of the overheads, so those samples are kind of automatically taken into account in different sources. So that's why you may see in the acoustic agent where it's going to be kind of fixed as the choice of the particular sound designer. But if you wanted to adjust like an acoustic kit here and say, okay, I want it to have this sound, we could just select the pad and adjust the panning independently for each sample right there. So, but generally I think the most common method would be from the audience perspective, but different producers and engineers may go back and forth. All right, always great to see Jazz Dude on. Always so helpful. All right, we have Nixaya on. All right, and we have Val Yu checking in from Vienna. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Ecstasy Tunes, hi Greg, is there any alternative for rewire features for Cubase 12? So what happened with rewire, it was originally developed by Propeller Heads for, I think it was done originally for Rebirth, and then it kind of carried on in Reason as a way to synchronize two programs, and they've chosen to stop development of it. So it's not going to work on future operating systems. It's not going to be working on, for instance, if you wanted to be M1 native processing. So it was a decision of Propeller Heads, and everyone else kind of had to react to that. So there currently isn't just an automatic, feature replacement for that. And a lot of people may not need it, as a lot of people will synchronize by MIDI timecode, even between programs on the same computer, or, the biggest use was going to be using it with Reason Studios, I think is the current name. And that is just working as a VST plugin. And, one of the problems would get to be that you always had to have two different programs with two different projects, and you have to open up multiple projects that aren't synchronized. So I think it was a good decision for companies to go the route of a VST plugin, but there isn't currently something the equivalent of rewire or replacement, and it's kind of out of Steinberg's control for that. All right, so we have Pete Van Blokland checking in from Amsterdam. Thanks for joining us today. We have Soren from Sweden, and we have Paul from Sweden, who's been a Cubase user since 1994. So thanks for joining us and being such a loyal customer all these years, almost going on 30 years. All right, always wonderful to see Peter from Montreal, the Heartbreak Time Machine, who asks, is Control Room supposed to allow me to output directly to OBS/Streamlabs? I'm confused about how it works in the signal flow. So it's not designed, the Control Room isn't designed to output directly to OBS. There are plugins that you could place in the Control Room. I think, some people use Restream as a plugin, but the Control Room allows you to send the audio out to different destinations, and often people will send it to different monitors. But you could go to the inserts here and just have a plugin that could be sent out. So I think it's the company that does Reaper, makes Restream. A lot of people have problems with it working reliably from what I gather from feedback on live streams. But the Control Room itself isn't like you turn it on and it's going to output to directly to OBS. What I do in my system is I take my audio output from I have a UR242 interface, a Steinberg UR242, and I connect that into, I'm using a Yamaha AG08 mixer, which is designed for streaming, and I plug my microphone into the AG08, and when I go to OBS, the OBS is using the AG08, and that's what it's using for its audio communication, and Cubase is using the UR242. So there's no direct function in Cubase to have it automatically stream to OBS with the Control Room. But there are some third-party plugins that could be placed into the inserts of the Control Room that could be used to make that connection between the two. Okay, so Value asks, how can I tune Cubase 12 Pro to, let's say, 412 Hertz, or at least make the Very Audio function work on that specific tuning? So generally, it's, Cubase will automatically, it doesn't really matter. Cubase will capture whatever audio frequencies that you record into it. I know that there's kind of that people often want to tune. I haven't heard 412 Hertz, for an A instead of 440. I've seen all sorts of different, it's cosmically aligned with the universe because sand naturally rotates at 432 as opposed to 440. But if you wanted to tune everything at Very Audio, what I would do is try to offset. And if you go to fine tune, if you knock this up, I think if you knock it up 8 cents, then you could do all of your tuning. And this would allow you to do all of your Very Audio tuning for the audio to compensate for it. So the tuning, where it could make sense, like in Very Audio, that when you snap to particular notes, so let's come and we'll look at this in Very Audio, that we want this to maybe, snap to a tuning scale that's 8 cents less. So let's say if I want to come over here, and so as we tune, if we want this to be 8 cents. So once you tune, all you'd have to do is then just, you could tune it normally here and then drop it down by 8 cents if needed. So I think that if you played a 432 versus 440, of an audio file, that it might not be that big of a difference. So let's say if I just wanted to play this vocal file here. All right, and I'll duplicate this particular track, and I will bounce this one to create a new file. So just come here to bounce selection. All right, and I'll knock this by 8 cents. Oh, not 8 semitones, sorry. So do a fine tune here. So I think, maybe in the big scheme of things, if, that it's probably not that big of a deal, but you could try to offset it with selecting the events and doing fine tuning if you've tuned directly into, like, your guitars to A is 432. So always wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. We have Tiago checking in, sending greetings from Brazil. Wonderful for you to join us, Tiago. Hope you're doing well. All right, we have Michael Pierce from outside London. Is hoping that everyone is safe and well. He's working in the background, prepping for a session at Chapel Studios tomorrow. All right, and always great to see Razel from Denmark. We have a question from Jovanovic 3D from Slovenia. Okay, so we see, can I control cutoff from Retrolog and Pad Shop at the same time with MIDI track and send option? How can I record the automation from both? All right, so let's go ahead and just, I think I may have a Retrolog up here. So, and okay, and I'll add a Pad Shop. So I think generally it's going to be, so let me just, I'll just add, let's say, just a new Pad Shop instrument. Okay, so say I wanted to record like this cutoff. All right, so I'm going to just all right, so let's see if this is, I'm going to check if my MIDI remote is, I'm going to disable it here real quick. Okay, so now we're going to have, I'll get to this particular track. Let's get to our MIDI remote, and we're going to see what, we'll go to capture. And the MIDI monitor, I just want to make sure, okay, so this is spitting out controller 11. So I want to control the cutoff with this as learn CC. So we have this as 11. Let's go open up our synth bass patch. And all right, so I want to also learn CC. All right, so now as soon as I play, I have both of these tracks armed. think, let's see. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if it's only going to do one at a time, I think. Okay, so right now that both are selected, I can record the notes. Let's go over here. All right, and we can see that we assigned the same controller for both of them. So I just right-clicked and captured MIDI CC1, and then as we would just play back, we recorded the same data in. Let me just. But we can see that the same data has been recorded into both parts. So when I come here, we'll look at it in our MIDI editor. And then as we want to just, switch between, and we'll look at, let's say, our expression data. So what we've done is just to look at both events, and then you could just see that when we look at this event that we'll have kind of the same exact notes and the same CC data. So that's how you could record. So if you just kind of put both of the tracks into record. All right, always wonderful to see Dave Glick on the live stream. He lives not far from me, McLean, Virginia. I hope you're doing well, Dave. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Okay, so Tiago asks, is there a way to snap to grid in Very Audio? I can't do it here. Don't know what's happening. All right, so let's take a look. Great. Okay, so I'm not sure if you want the particular, so let's go ahead and, so, usually when we snap, we can snap directly to the scale, but let's say if I wanted to extend this note out, I think that this might be more free. I don't think it's like snap to, let's just check here. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, so I think that if we do this, let's make sure that so I have snap turned on. So I think that when we do warping, that this isn't kind of snap to grid because it can be really contingent. But let's say I'm just going to set my grid here to quarter note, and let's see if it. Yeah, so it doesn't look like within the Very Audio editor that the rhythm is going to snap to the grid, but you could, I know it's convenient to do it there, but you could always just go to like your time warp tool. So I'll just come over here and say, let's create warp markers from the hit points, and I'll switch to my free warp tool. And then as we move with the free warp tool, that this can automatically snap to the grid. So let's say if I want this to snap to our quantized value, and I have it set to eighth notes. I could just move this and as we work with this, with our different warp points, that we can have those snap. So, but it doesn't look like we could do it inside of the Very Audio editor. I'll just take another look at it and we'll just make sure. Because often in the Very Audio editor, it's also contingent upon other parts. So like as I snap this, so it doesn't look like it's a rhythmic snap, but more of a pitch snap for that. And let me just try a couple modifier keys here. Doesn't look like the modifier keys are enabling the snap to grid function. So I think you might have to, because I think that the grid is going to be contingent upon also what is, because it's just a segment. So if you wanted to kind of do rhythmic snapping to the grid, maybe use the free warp tool to do that. All right, so we see Pete just saying, hi, Greg, question. When I unmix songs with Spectral Layers 10, sometimes the isolated bass part sounds distorted. What can cause that? In the previous version, I didn't have that problem, thanks. So within Spectral Layers 10, all the algorithms are going to be slightly changed and optimized using a bunch of artificial intelligence. And often, you'll find, or what I've found, is that, some recordings will come out like really clean. Like I just did, I can't really do it on YouTube or during a live stream, unfortunately, but I like if you take like Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, that kind of unmixes incredibly well. And then, it could be depending upon the original recording and the source material of how it's going to work. Sometimes some mixes may have a lot of low-end distortion in it, and you may have to combine that with other non-musical data or other sounds as well. But, and I know it's hard sometimes to do a direct comparison between Spectral Layers 9 and 10, because when you update it, you don't have the 9 version anymore. So it could, you'll find that you'll get different results on different material. So okay, so we see from the Heartbreak Time Machine just saying thank you regarding the control room and streaming. All right, always wonderful to see Matt Elston on from London. Glad you can make it today or tonight. All right, always so great to have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. So I believe the virtual ice cream will begin, but he has a short day. He has studio work this afternoon. We're glad you could join us, Michael. And one other thing, if you do learn a tip or trick about, on your Steinberg stuff, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to Keyboard. Okay, so we see Tiago asks, also in Very Audio, is there a way to show flat notes in the keyboard and notes instead of sharp notes? And when I hover mouse over the notes, I have one vocal piece in A flat major. Okay, so let's say, first off, I'm going to go to like my chord track, and let's set our key, and we're going to say that this is going to be in a flat major. Okay. And then I want to make sure that we have this particular scale set here. Okay, so let's, and this could be contingent on a preference. So let's go to event display, and we'll say chords and pitches. And we will just do enharmonics from chord track. So let's see if we adjust this, and even though it says A flat, we're in G sharp major. I know it's kind of annoying. All right, so here I'm just going to choose my enharmonic to Okay, so let's go look at some of our very audio. Okay, so right now it's showing kind of D sharp 3. And not sure if there's an enharmonic function. Doesn't look like there is. But I know in the MIDI editing that you could switch how it's displayed based on the chord track here. Try one other thing real quick. See if we could force the enharmonic change here. So it doesn't look like, and let's also try just a quick preference here. Let's see if I take that off. Okay, so I'm going to take off automatic scales. Yeah, so it seems like it's going to default to the to G sharp major, unfortunately. So I see that we could. We see kind of the voicing laid out for us there, but still sees. So it looks like it may just show up as sharp. So I could play around with it some more, Tiago, if you want to email me. Sorry about that. Okay, so we see from value question. So is the rowing 1 Very Audio 2.2 Fine Tune Transpose 3 Auto Tune plugin? So I'm not sure if you're asking if it's using question. So is this the rowing Very Audio 2.2 Fine Tune Transpose 3 Auto Tune plugin? So I don't think it has anything. I'm not sure if it's the row. So it's not using auto tune by any ways. And let me check one other thing to see if I'll check one other plugin on the fine tune to see if it's. But there's a pitch shift plugin here called Pitch Correct, and let's see if this does fine tuning out of curiosity. So here we could tune to 432 for the tuning scale using the Pitch Correct plugin, but that's more of a real-time process if needed. So that may be another option. All right, so we have Manuel Ramsier just saying hi to everyone. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Nick is on from the UK. Says, hey guys, hope everybody's safe and well, and has clicked the like button. So, all right, you see Michael Teams has already started his ice cream distribution. And he's granted my family and myself 1 gallon of limoncello ice cream. That sounds like a great selection. Thank you, Michael. It's very generous. And Uno Momento is countered with he's watching and listening with 1 eye and 1 ear, and he has Carhu Beer. Is the name of the game today for him. All right, always wonderful to see Grant Nicholas from Baltimore on, and we have Mike Big Johnson checking in from New Jersey. See John Costigan and just saying thanks again, Greg, for the shared copy videos. Yes, just one of my new tutorials was posted on the Steinberg YouTube channel yesterday. It just says always things to learn with Cubase. So always great to see Captenergy Music on. Glad you can make it today. All right, we see Heartbreak Time Machine's going to he's off going to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, hoping he gets some ad work, so good luck. All right, so we see Captenergy Music just about ready to have an upcoming birthday, and at the air quality in Pennsylvania, it's not too far from me, it's a couple hours, is improved from the Canadian wildfires. So yeah, it's nice to be able to go outside and breathe normally. Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. So Jazzy Lamel asks, is Cubase set up for Dolby Atmos? If not, what's needed to do it? So yeah, it's set up. So if you wanted to kind of do a Dolby Atmos type of project, and let me see if I may have kind of like a starting off one. So yeah, with Cubase 12, it introduced Dolby Atmos work. Let's see if this is... See if I can find the one I was thinking of. Okay, I'll just start it from scratch here. So let's say I wanted to import, I'll do a new project here, just so we can take it from scratch. And let's go ahead and import an audio file. Okay, so let me just take this. Okay, so when we're starting in Dolby Atmos project, you want to make sure that your sample rate is set to 48K. I'll go ahead and convert this. Okay, and we need to make sure that your audio buffer is going to be set to 512 samples. So see 512. So as we start working with this, and then inside of Cubase, what we can do is go to your project menu, and we'll see ADM authoring for Dolby Atmos. And there's a setup assistant, because this could be always not so intuitive process. So we'll come over here to the setup assistant, and basically want to just kind of check everything, use the 714 renderer, come over here and hit OK. And once we do this, if you have 12 speakers in your studio, you could have it set up for your 714. I'm going to choose to do binaural monitoring so that we could hear this in headphones. So if you have headphones on, all you'd have to do now at this point is we'll go to our channel settings, and we'll open up our panner for this particular track. And as we pan, we could kind of move this around in 360 degrees. So let's say if I just wanted to automate that pan, I could just come over here. Let's write then if we wanted to kind of change the height, so you could kind of do that type of panning to all of your different tracks. And then when you need to export your mix, all you'd have to do is again go to your ADM authoring for Dolby Atmos, and directly from here, once you have everything kind of set up, at this point you would export the ADM file. So you just do it directly from there. So yeah, Cubase 12 and Nuendo 12 are kind of all set up for doing Atmos. All right, so you see from Ecstasy Tunes, just says, hi Greg, I'm not able to find the kit I exported in Groove Agent. How do I set up the location correctly so I can recall them whenever I want? So let's say if I have made, I'll just add we'll do a custom Groove Agent kit here. All right, and if I wanted to take just a portion, all right, so now we could just kind of take different sections of our audio file or different samples that we've recorded, and I will even just come over here and let's just route. I'll just do new audio recording, and I'll just do, let's say we're doing different sample based stuff. I just wanted to punch in and punch out. We'll just kind of create different audio files. So now each of these audio files can be dragged directly to our drum kit, and then all we have to do is, we'll export our kit with samples. So we'll call this July 11th. And we could choose where we want to save the kit. So we'll give it a name. So we'll just say, okay, this is going to be, we could adjust different character traits. It's going to be done by me, whatever. And once we are here, we could just choose the little up arrow, and we could browse to different container folders. So if you wanted to just say, okay, let's put this onto like our desktop. And now when we go to, like I think even if we go to our media bay here, we go to user presets to VST instruments, that you could see some of the other factory presets that I've made here. And let me I could rescan probably in the media bay, my desktop to look. But that's, so this is kind of the location. So you say you want to load the kit. And we'll do all agents. And we'll see if it shows up in here. These might be just factory kits. But then kind of once you come over to your desktop, let's say we get to your file browser. Let's look at desktop. You know, you could save it into default locations and it's automatically kind of recognized, but we'll come over here to our desktop. Let's see if I didn't save it right, but just, you know, make sure that you, when you go to export the kit with the samples, that you could just choose the particular. So right here is the kit that we had made. So I could just come right over here, and if we wanted to overwrite that kit, so again, just kind of choose directly up here, or you could create a new folder and you could choose what location that you're saving it to right there. Okay, so Ted Springman asks a question. Hi, Greg. I want to cycle record violin parts to create an ensemble effect where the first pass will be improvised, but I'll need to sight read additional passes without stopping. How can I set this up? Okay, so if we have, let's do a new. Okay, so let's say I'm doing my violin recording here. And I'll just put it into like a, let's make this the active project, that would help. So let's say I want to do like a 2-bar phrase. We're gonna call this violin, okay? And we'll just solo this. So imagine we're doing our wonderful violin recording. We're going to arm the track for record before, and make sure we have an input selected. Okay, so let's say we'll do a couple of different passes. So it seems like maybe Ted, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, first pass will be improvised. You want to create an ensemble effect. All right, so I'm just going to do a particular, so we've done, let's say, 6 takes. So now I wanted to take these and turn them into like an ensemble. At this point, what we could do is we're going to open up the lanes. So we'll just, right now we have this, we could see that we're going to have basically, you know, we could open up, we'll show all of our lanes. So these are different takes, but we're only going to hear one of these at a particular time. And if we wanted to kind of stack this, and this is a great way of kind of doing like background vocals, like gang background vocals, I could select all of the lanes, right click, and say we're going to create tracks from lanes. So we're going to say create tracks from lanes right here, and then we'll see that some of them will, as we do that, come up as muted events, and then I'll just grab my mute tool, and now these are all on their separate tracks, and we could have all those different files stacked together just that easily. So this way we could have one particular, we could do one instrument that's recorded and do it as different lanes, select, and we could also conversely select a number of tracks and turn that. So we'll come over here and we'll create tracks from lanes. So we could just, right click and take those, into lanes. So once we've done, we have all the lanes, again, select and create tracks from lanes right there. Just right click on the track area. Then you could have all the one violin part that was recorded is individual lanes kind of stacked and played together. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding, Ted. And it's wonderful to see you on. Ted's based in Los Angeles area. Glad you could make it today. All right, so we have Patrick Emanuel A. says, hi, Greg, happy to be on live. So glad you can make it. We see Brian Sawyer Sr. checking in from Beulahville, North Carolina. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so we see a question from Patrick. Does Cubase have any plugins for polishing the sound, like making a hard synth sound soft? Okay, so let's say I wanted to come over here and let me open up this particular instrument. So let me just find something that's like a little more aggressive. All right, so let's say you wanted something like that to be a little less harsh. Often you could do it kind of in the instrument itself, but you could also just come over to a particular plugin. So if you go to, let's go to like our audio inserts here, and let's just go to like a filter plugin. So let's just say, okay, let's just go to even a more filter, very simple. So if you have it just as an audio file, often EQ is also another kind of great trick, or you could try even another, like the dual filter. So without that on, so maybe experiment with like the morphing filter or the dual filter and check those out and let me know if it makes sense. All right, Soren asks, Soren68, hi everybody, I'm wondering, did we not get Melodyne Essentials a voucher for purchasing Cubase 12 or something, anyone? So during I think it was the promotion in September of last year, there was a limited time window where you could get Melodyne Essential at no charge with your Cubase. But if it wasn't activated within a certain period, it was like a month that the promotion was going on, that it expired. But there was a voucher, and you could maybe see in your My Steinberg account, and I think it was for a limited amount of time. So you could get like an acoustic audio plugin. There was also Arturia with the CS80 just as vouchers. So. All right. Okay, so we have a question from my Big Johnson, who asks, sorry, my chat field just scrolled on me. Let me just find the... All right. So my Big Johnson asks, "What's up, Greg? Question: Automation points, dB value adjustment. Any way to adjust them easier with the keyboard shortcut or with mouse keyboard combo? Perhaps mouse combo. Mouse jumps all over the place." All right. So an easy way of doing an automation adjustment once you have the point. So let's say I have some different automation points in here. All right, so if I wanted to adjust, let's say this automation point right here, all you'd have to do if you want to be precise about it is, you could just adjust right from the info line here. And if you find that as you're adjusting the point, it's a little too fast, let's see, if you hold down, sometimes doesn't look like the shift key usually will give you fine control, but try just to select the point and just use your mouse scroll wheel right here, and then you could adjust the automation that easily. If you want to do it for multiple points, you could select, come right over here, and you could just adjust those particular automation points like so. And you could just also type in, so say, okay, I want this to be -6, and type that in, or I want it to be minus 8.11. You could just enter in those particular values right there from the info line. So, consider using the info line and just use the mouse scroll wheel. Let me know if that makes sense and works for you. Okay. So we see from Patrick Emanuel A, what's the proper master chaining Cubase, multiband compressor, or envelope shaper, or imager, or expander? So there's no formula of I would approach every song differently, and I think when people often kind of criticize the sound of music or how productions are evolving and think it's all very similar, I think it's because people are trying to use change on everything as opposed to doing what's needed for a particular song. Any of those could be used in any order. So it really depends on what you're doing in each plugin of what would go before or after. So if you're doing, you may not have to do as much envelope, like a multiband envelope shaping, depending on what your multiband compression settings are. So the order is going to be depending upon the functions and the settings on each of the plugins as well. So there isn't a necessarily, but generally people will have a limiter as the last slot, and maybe after the limiter they may run a often if they're utilizing a plugin for dithering, but generally for processing, the limiter will be the last slot, and that's kind of a good rule of thumb. The others are completely how you use the functions in the plugin, as well as if it's going to be overlapping with different things. All right, so we have Pindo Purba just saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us. All right, Fabian asks, hi Greg, does quarter work well for you in layer interval mode? Because I hear both the sound and the notes that trigger the chord and the chord itself. Thanks. Okay, let's give it a shot. So let's say I have Rhodes, and let's put the quarter plugin on. I haven't worked with this one as heavily. All right, so let's come over here to one of the factory presets. All right, so let's say so let's say so I'm just going to bypass it. So this chord that I'm using this note to trigger this chord, so it's an F note, is not in that particular chord. So it's just whatever the particular chord is set up to be triggered from that note. So doesn't seem like it's that, it's just that one particular note is, I'll just make sure, so in layer interval mode. So I'm not sure if you're still in learn, but let's say if we start off, I'll just start from scratch here. Okay, so let's say I'm going to hit this E note, but I'm going to play and I'm going to learn the chord. So I haven't worked with this too much, but let's just say like we can see the chords that are played, but it doesn't seem like the root note is like that C that I'm triggering here for this chord isn't included. So let me know if that's what you're running into, or if I'm completely doing it differently than you. All right, so we see Pindo has received 1 gallon of homemade vanilla ice cream. So you see, Greg, is there any professional mix engineer who uses Cubase as their primary DAW? So yeah, I mean, there's tons of them. So I mean, you go to like Chuck Ainlay, Gary Pachoza, Teddy Riley, you have Jean-Marie Horvat on here, as well as on the live streams. Get into Elliot Shiner is probably the most well-respected engineer in the world. So lots of people definitely using Cubase. All right, so you see kind of follow-up question from Soren. It says, we got a voucher for Melodyne Essential with Cubase purchase, I believe. Shouldn't you give support on Melodyne now? So no, it's it's like, we did kind of a joint collaboration, so we're not, I'm just because we did a promotion with Celemony Systems doesn't mean that we're selling it or realizing revenue from it. And I'm sure that Celemony Systems doesn't want us to support Melodyne or don't expect us to, as we don't expect them to support Cubase and do Cubase live streams as well. So it's just a benefit to our user base. It's very generous of Celemony Systems to do. Okay, so you see a comment from Patrick just says, I saw Junkie XL making all the sounds in Cubase, saving it as a library. Then he's using it while composing. He's using lots of plugins while production. Done that affect or make mixing bad? So I don't see why it would make mixing bad, but a lot of times, especially film composers, and why they love the sampler track is, the ability to be able to kind of take any sound. They always want to have unique sounds that no one else has ever had before. So, Hans Zimmer was like really, like a lot of the sounds that he will do for projects, tend to get reused over and over again and almost become a cliche because everyone's trying to mimic what Hans is doing. And he had the same kind of thing with Junkie XL where they're constantly sound designing, So many film composers like Junkie will, if you ask them, a general consensus I get, I haven't asked Junkie this specifically, is that a lot of times they'll spend, like a good amount of the starting of the process designing fresh and unique sounds for a particular film. And this film will have like a whole set of different sounds and samples so that each project is unique. So once they have that done, they will often have their orchestral sounds and kind of typical sounds, but there's kind of a whole sonic palette that will be created, uniquely for each film. And Junkie's really good at kind of coordinating with the sound designers as well, because there's nothing like having this great kind of musical, because the line between kind of a sound design element and a scoring element sometimes could be often worked in different circles. So I know when Junkie, I remember him telling me when he was doing Mad Max, the remake 5 years ago, that, he actually, I think, went to Australia to meet with the sound designer so that they could coordinate so that, this really cool sound design element was in E flat and the sound effect was in E, and they were kind of both drone-like, that they wouldn't be conflicting. So they actually kind of agreed and, to make sure that the sound design and the musical score were kind of in harmony with each other, that they weren't clashing, because often they're kind of two different things, and then it's up to the mixer of the film to, at that point, make a decision. And, if something is clashing, something just gets pushed down, and that's how it ends up. And you're like, oh, I couldn't hear the score, and that's because the two teams may have not worked together and coordinated it. All right, so we see a question. Hi, can you mix tracks that are in solo and also hear the reverb sends without hearing other tracks that are not solo, but are also using those reverb buses? Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and open up a project and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I think all of these are feeding the same reverb. I thought I had a reverb. Let me just put one on here. Okay, so I'm going to take all the guitar parts here. If I select a correct modifier key, okay, so I'm going to select these tracks here, we're going to assign them to the same reverb. So we have all of these going, so let's go ahead into solo. So when I do this, I'm not hearing the rhythm guitars that are also going into, so let's say these are all going into the same reverb. But if I go to this lead that's panned to the left, I don't hear the rhythm. And let me just see if there's a preference that might affect that. But it doesn't seem to automatically do that. So but it seems like it's automatically, I don't hear the other tracks that are kind of feeding. So just coming here, I don't hear the rhythm guitar part, I just hear the lead. So we're not hearing that part bleeding in on the reverb. I'll try, let me just switch these all to pre-fader. That doesn't seem to make a difference. So let me know if I'm doing something differently than you, but it seems like it's when I solo the tracks that the other tracks are feeding that particular, that if, you know, they're sharing the same effects and aren't carrying over when we solo. So let me know if I'm doing something differently. All right, so we have development of a void. His comment is, just want to say you are the man, Greg. Thank you for your continuous help. So I'm just glad to be able to help people. And thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. All right, so we see Pindo asks, I have a question. I have a problem with the Moog Sub 37 as an external instrument. There seems to be a MIDI note stuck or sustained, and I can't fix it. The other external instrument is doing fine, though. So one way to test this, you know, and often when we have like kind of stuck MIDI notes, you know, check like when you go into like the MIDI data here, you know, go into like the list editor. And sometimes you could see if there's any extra data here. So the list editor, and again, you go to MIDI to the list editor, you may notice that there could be lots of other information besides different MIDI notes. So make sure there's no like sysx data or unexpected controllers there. One thing that you could do is try just you could see if it's in the part itself, if you just kind of swap the data from the track that's playing fine on the external instrument to the try taking that, like the part, the event that's being routed to the external instrument, and send that to your sub 37 as well. Often when notes are hanging, it could be a result of kind of a weird USB MIDI driver. If you're probably using USB for MIDI. If you have the option of just having a 5-pin DIN connection to test as a control, try that as well. But usually, like, stuck MIDI notes can be just how the instrument is reacting to MIDI data that's going out, and so try to see if it's like switch the parts for the instrument that's playing fine and see if that plays back fine. And I realize that it may be like a playing chords in one part and then moving it to a monophonic instrument, and it may not carry over, but if you kind of switch parts, you can see if it's an event within, like a MIDI message within the event that's causing it, or if it's just kind of maybe a MIDI driver that's not behaving as it should. So I would say it's going to be something in the track, or the USB MIDI driver would be kind of the issue. All right, so we have Reg Edit saying good evening from the UK, or Reg Edit. Let's see, from Jazz Dude, and this may be in relation to Patrick's question. It says Hans Zimmer's also a Cubase fan, so yeah, and this is a big Cubase junkie. No pun intended. Okay, so we have a question from Thomas Zaleski. Hi, Greg. Is there a key command which is the equivalent of clicking on the bottom horizontal scroll bar and sliding it slightly left or right so that the project moves just a few bars left and right? So let's say if we want to move kind of the project, let me just zoom in here. So okay, so key command. All right, so I think what a lot of people do is, I think it's just, so if you want to, just with the mouse scroll wheel, and if you hold down the shift key, so if it's this type of navigation that you want, we can just, just the shift key and the mouse scroll wheel. So let me know if that's kind of, I'll just reread it just to make sure. Yeah, so it's not a key command per se, but try just, if you wanted to control it without having to grab the mouse, just the shift key, and use the mouse scroll wheel to go kind of left to right in time. So let me know if it makes sense for you for accomplishing that. It's not a key command, but I think it's probably even faster than a key command. And just see a follow-up question. Basically, a nudge command that would move the entire piano roll left or right a bar or two. So let's try from I'll just glue these events together here. So let's say we have this as our active window. So just try just to shift and using your mouse scroll wheel. and then you could just kind of nudge as needed, just like that. And if we're zoomed in more, so let me know if that's helpful. Okay, so we have a question from Patrick, who asks, Greg, can you show me how to create a preset in MIDI Logical Editor and make it as a keyboard shortcut, for example? I want to select all the downbeats. We have a preset. How can I assign that to a keyboard shortcut? Okay, so let's say I want to select all notes that are on the downbeat. So we'll just look at this particular event here, and I'll look at it in a MIDI drum editor. So we have a number of bars. So I want notes that are on the downbeat to be selected. So to create a logical editor preset for that, we'll go to MIDI to logical editor, and we want to select, type is equal to note, and we'll say the position is going to be, and we'll say inside the bar range. And then I'm just going to put like the very first downbeat here. So if I have done this correctly, we'll select all the notes that are on the downbeat. All right, so I'm going to save this as a preset. All right. And we will now go ahead and assign a keyboard shortcut to that. All right, so once we have the preset saved, we'll go to Edit, to Key Commands, and then you'll see under the category Process Logical Preset. And if it's a project logical editor, it'd be a process project logical editor preset. So we can see all my CCLS, and we will select select notes on downbeat. And now we could assign a key command to that, and every time we hit that key command, we could just trigger that particular logical editor preset without having to open up the logical editor. So once again, once we've saved the preset, come over to your key commands, and then you'll see under Process Logical Preset, then just select the particular preset. And every time you create a preset, it's automatically added to the list here. So you can see all the ones I've created over time are now added to the particular list. And once you do that, then that key command will fire off this logical editor preset without you having to open it every single time. All right, so we have from Zephaniah asks, sometimes I record a bass in an audio track and sometimes it crashes. How do I keep it crashing? I'm using Cubase Artist 10.5 on PC. So I record lots of bass parts for people in Cubase, and I don't really have it crashing on me. So I don't know if you're utilizing any third-party plugins as you're tracking, but usually most crashes in Cubase will be the result of like third-party plugins that are kind of misbehaving. So if you're using a particular plugin like to monitor the bass as you're tracking, try to record it dry. But I would say that as a rule of thumb that you could definitely record bass parts in Cubase without fear of the program crashing. So but if you're using any third-party plugins in that process, try just doing a very simple setup of just recording the bass with no plugins, no instruments loaded. And then you may say, oh, every time you do it and this plugin with this preset is on, then it acts up and misbehaves. Then that could kind of lead you down to identifying the problem. See Michael Teams also mentioning a lot of the K-pop producers are also doing Cubase, some other people doing mixing. So as engineers, you get like Ian Kirkpatrick, see who I got together with last time. We have a lot of the guys that are doing work in Max Martin's camp. I went to Max Martin's studio last time I was in LA. Went to Star Parodi and Jeff Fair's studio. We also went to Lito's place. So, there's lots of people and engineers running Cubase, making a great living very happily. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on from Royal Wooten Bassett. Glad you can make it. Glad you can make it earlier. I know sometimes you always, make it towards the end. It's always great to see you on. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to target that like button and smash it. All right, so Lars asks, hi Greg, I can't color several marked tracks. It only works with one track at a time. How do I change something? Do I have to change something in the preference settings? Thanks. Okay, so let's say I want to change all of these tracks at once. So one of the things to do is make sure you have no events selected. If an event is selected, that will have higher priority over the tracks. So if I wanted to select all these tracks and let's change the color to this, you see that this event changed, but the tracks did not change. So if I have the tracks selected with no events selected, when I change the colors, now we can just come over and just say I'll do my multiple tracks here. And then we could just change the colors like so. So make sure that there are no events selected and just the tracks. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters, and she's like number 49. I saw that your comment on a LinkedIn article got shared all over the place. Sable, congratulations on that. About the writer strike and the Screen Actors Guild, I think. Sable's in the news. Right. Just reading through comments. My chat field just jumped way down. All right, so we have Lawrence Scott just checking in from Riverside. Says he's fairly new to all this, currently enrolled in Berkeley College's Cubase course. So yeah, I think my friend Kevin Doucette teaches that. So he's a wonderful teacher. So lucky to be able to share from him. I've known Kevin for 15 or so years. Incredibly gracious, incredibly talented person. So. And welcome to the Club Cubase live stream. It's just a comment from Lawrence says, "Yeah, I've been working with Cubase for a bit of time, but I can do this on my own mentality isn't cutting it now." So I think this is a great resource where you get to see how different people run Cubase, and kind of, I think people learn a lot from other people's questions as well. All right, so we see from ProWash DFW 4 or 8 core preferable for Cubase, building a new machine for Cubase. Get the fastest processor you can get and get as many of them as you can get. So I would go for an 8 core. So my personal studio machine, I'm running like a 10 core. But yeah, and I think also if you get more cores, that just means that your computer will last longer before it needs to be replaced again. All right, Sable Winters asks, there seems to be some excitement over Spectral 10. Why is 10 superior to 9? So, there's a lot of refinement in the algorithms to make it even better quality. 9 was great and the best at the time, and 10 has really kind of upped the game. I also think that there's, ability of separating voices, like in conversation, being able to isolate, like, spoken words in a really noisy environment, being able to do transcription of audio or even a vocal, and being able to export that as a text file, or so there's just all sorts of great new features, but just a really great refinement of algorithms and artificial intelligence to make it more practical for unmixing and being able to refine your selections for processing and editing. We see from ProWash DFW, which says they heard some programs don't access all the cores. So Cubase will definitely use all of your cores. Where how the load distribution is spread across. So generally, like, one track will be utilizing one core. Another track will, so if you put like 16 super heavy plugins on one track, that may bring your whole Cubase system down because that one core is getting so slammed. So after a while, Cubase will definitely utilize all of your cores and spread them out. So. So we see from Patrick, Greg, is there any other way to mid-side on Cubase other than EQ? Like, I'm using compression on 100 hertz. I'm using delay on 200 hertz to 2 kilohertz. Is this possible? Any plugins? So if you're using, if you're utilizing just, I don't think that that's mid-side if you only want it to be 200 hertz to 2K for processing. So if I only wanted to process 200, let's say a delay from 200 to 2K, so I'll take just this lead part here. Let me just put it in the center for. So generally mid-side is going to be like the middle part of the panning spectrum. So if you wanted to, let's add an effects channel track to this, and I'm going to add a delay. We'll just do a simple mono delay. Okay, so we're going to add the track, and we'll make it just like, let's say, a quarter note delay. So as we play, right, now I want that delay to only be on particular frequencies. So what I'm going to do is to go to the delay channel here. So let's go to my okay, so we have our mono delay here. So, you know, if you want it to only delay between certain frequency ranges, what I'm going to do now is just put a imager plugin. And I'm going to choose like my second band here. And let's just solo this. So we'll say, okay, I want it to be 200 to 2K. Okay, so we're just going to turn these off. So now our delay is only in these frequency ranges. If I turn this off, we'll have the full delay. Turn this on, then I can just have the frequencies. So then we could limit the frequencies. But generally, when you think mids, when you say MS, make sure I'm not. When you say mid side, you know, generally mid side is where we could process just the panning. So you have like let's say we have our panning where we're going to have left, right, and center, and we could think of left to right as being the sides and mid as being the center part of the panning spectrum, like often where a vocal or snare drum would sit. But if you're just doing kind of frequency based, the middle part of the frequency spectrum, just put another delay before, and then you could isolate the particular frequencies that are going to be fed into that particular delay. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Patrick. All right. All right. Okay, reading through comments, see some discussion of different computer builds. Okay, so we have Imad Salsa. Hello, can you please help in 5.1 setup and how to monitor all the 5.1 speakers in the control panel? So I guess maybe the control room. So once you have, let's say, a 5.1 output configured, so we'll come over here to our audio connections, and let's say we have an output of, and we're going to add a 5.1 bus. Okay, so what we need to do now is to define within our particular monitor setup where we need, I'm just going to remove one, and we're going to add our monitor, and we'll make this configuration 5.1. And this is generally, when we come over here, we'll just call this surround. All right, and this is where you would define the outputs from your audio interface. You're going to need an audio interface with at least 6 outputs to feed the left, right, center LFE or subwoofer, and left and right surround. So once you have that configured, you would come over here to your monitors, and once you have your monitors kind of set up, we'll just get to our main. We can say, okay, we want to go to your surround, And then if you wanted to do your down mixing, you could say, okay, I wanted to do down mixing from stereo to mono, or if we wanted to go to your particular channels once you have that configured. But that's how, and now you have your master volume is controlling your 5.1 volume and not just your stereo volume. So we need to define the outputs, and each of these tracks would need to be fed to, instead of the stereo output, we need to feed this to the 5.1 out, and then go into your control room, add a monitor, and instead of it being stereo, you want it to be 5.1, set up all your different connections here, and then you're able to control everything from your 5.1 with down mix, presettings, and switch between stereo and mono, and see your available channels here. I just have stereo currently loaded up, but this would function. Your control room would now drive all 6 speakers volumes just directly from there once you have the correct monitor chosen. So all right, just reading through comments. All right. So I was just curious. I'll ask a question on the live stream. If anyone has gotten any good things on the Amazon Prime sale that they found for audio stuff, you could leave a comment in the questions field. All right, so you see Michael Teams has to take off. So thanks for joining us, Michael. Have a safe drive and a great session. All right, so we see, hey Greg, can I freeze FX channels and group channels? So while you can't freeze them because there's no actual data on them, if you wanted to render them as audio, so let's say I want to take this particular example here, what I could do is, let's do an export audio mix down. So if I have like my two, I could say let's do multiple, and if I have group channels, I could, or let's say my effects channels, I could export audio, and I'm going to choose to keep these disabled for now, and we'll import them. We'll create an audio track in the project. So as soon as I come right over here, we'll say export. And I have real time chosen. I didn't have to, sorry. It's testing for someone on something. And now we could have our stereo mix, but now we could just come over here and have our reverence set up. So as soon as this will be just the reverence kind of rendered. Then we could have just the delay, so we could just render the particular effects, but since there's no event on the group or no event on the effects channel, so it's not frozen that way, but you could render it in place, which is in essence doing the same thing. And the groups could be done just like we did the effects send. So Sorry, my chat field just moved on me, so let me just jump back. All right. All right. Always wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Just says, thanks, Greg, for his and for a great Cubase question answer session. So wonderful to see Pablo has made it, just as Michael Teams has left. All right. So wonderful to see Pablo on. Pablo, the famed drummer of Hot Mess, my rhythm section compatriot. We see Nick giving Pablo a coffee, but he's not supposed to tell me. So, and we see Pablo just saying spectral layers is a game changer. So I will concur. And Pablo's a smart guy, so. Okay, still reading through different comments here. All right, so we see Uno Memento just says, I can't see so many colors in the color palette. Then Greg, where can I buy more? So you don't have to buy any more. If you want more colors, we'll give them to you free for being a loyal Club Cubase attendee. But if you go to your project menu and go to project color setup, so if we go to presets, all you have to do is just say, okay, I think it may default to like 16 colors like this. All right, but really all you have to do is say, okay, I want number of basic colors. We'll set to 32, and then you could have 4 color tints for those 32, and you could use basic colors, or if you want to use color tints, you could just come over there and have 128 colors that fast. So now when you go to color in your particular project, you'll have a whole healthy palette of colors to choose from. All right, so we see drum plugin only has stereo outputs, how to mono out the kick and snare, etc. So, I know people want to always mono out the kick and snare just because old concepts of perhaps working with different recording real drums, but the thing that you're hearing, the samples that you're hearing through the stereo out, it's all stereo. So if you actually sum it down to mono, it's going to change the sound. But if you really need it to do something, I think you could send it to groups if you really need to, but you realize that the sound that you're hearing is in stereo to start with, and then kind of changing it to mono is going to change the sound, and that was kind of the design intention of the particular plugin. So I'll just do new project here. just see if I can. All right, so let's say if I have okay, so every sound that you're hearing there is stereo. But let's come over and say, okay, I want this kick to go out of output 2. So we'll open this up. And now we will let's see if we can add a group to that particular output. Okay, so I'm going to make a mono bus. So we'll add a mono group track. Oh, just made it a 5.1 out, sorry. All right, so let's see if we can take this. If we route this to mono out. So there you could have kind of a mono output, but again, once you're actually, on the particular track, you're hearing, stereo. So, within the plugin, so it doesn't, I know conceptually it may make sense to have it in mono, but, everything is already in stereo. Now, if you want it to sound more collapsed, you can come over and let's go to, let's say, our panner on this. So we have our stereo track. We'll do a combined panner. And now for that output, we can have everything where it's not on the edges. So that would be very mono sounding. So, but let me know if there's a particular need of why you need it to change the sound from the original kit from stereo to mono. And maybe I could understand it a little better. All right, so we have Alejandro Chavez saying hello. Thanks for joining us on the live stream today. Glad you could be a part of it this afternoon. So we see from Alejandro Chavez asks, when I use splice samples like hi-hats and kicks sound distorted in Cubase 12, could it be the bit rate or sample rate? So it could be the, so I'm not sure, if you're doing the same exact sample rate and bit depth, probably the bit depth wouldn't change that particular quality because Cubase could have any number of bit depths currently within the project because everything is either at 32 or 64-bit floating. But check to make sure that when you're importing the sample loop, one is make sure that the sample rates are aligned. I don't use Splice as a tool, so I'm not super familiar with the workflow, but make sure that, and also when you drag it in, you could, like when we drag a sample in here, we may like if we have it set on like a really extremely low tempo, so let's say our tempo is at 40 beats a minute, and I drag a sample in, and now we play that, it may play it in musical mode. So try to, if it's like just a hi-hat sample of some kind, and you know what the timing is, it could be that it's an extreme time stretching scale. So if you take it off musical mode here from, once the sample is there, if you take it off of musical mode, and if it sounds better, it could be that it's just stretching it so much, and often like you could get more artifacts when you slow something down because it has to kind of fill in the space. So make sure that it's not, as you drop it in, that these tempos are roughly kind of in the ballpark, and and you could gauge to see if it's going to be that issue just by going into the musical mode and turning it off and on, and see if it sounds distorted with musical mode on and not with off. Then it could be that the stretching factor when you're dropping it in may be just too high for that to effectively not sound affected when dropped into the project. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay. You see Cody just says Hot Mess is a great band name. All right. So we see Benny just asking, hi Greg, did you receive my email regarding the Stream Deck presets? So yeah, I'll have to get mine kind of hooked up. I've been kind of involved with some other projects, so I want to get it cleaned up just a little bit, but I'll try to get those sent off. I'll try to get it done maybe over this weekend and get it sent over. So I'll just check, make sure I didn't have any typos and stuff like that. So, but sorry I didn't get a chance to respond. I had yesterday off from work. So. All right, so we see Soren is just asking, I've asked everyone everywhere, how do I create a hit song? The question is for fun, but also interesting to hear answers from everyone. So, obviously if there's like a little, I think that there's probably everyone in this that watches a live stream has written great songs. And you could have great songs, and there's obviously just a fluke of when something viral will take off. And it's, could be more so today than in other years. But a lot of times, just being like super lucky, but it takes so many people put so much energy into the song. Like I have a friend that's going to be doing a gig, and he's put so much energy in preparation for the gig that he's forgotten to actually tell people about the gig and to promote the gig. So while a lot of people focus on the particular strategy of writing a song, and it's going to be clever because it'll have this kind of, double play on words. It's going to have a really catchy hook. Also think about, how are you going to promote it? How is it, think about that as a strategy as well as part of the songwriting process of what is the marketing hook. It's sometimes it's really easy to come up with the musical hook and have a great musical hook, but if there's no marketing hook, it's like I can remember my college jazz group, our director was kind of an old school jazz guy, and he would be really bitter that no one would show up for like a jazz ensemble concert that he put a lot of effort, and be really bitter that no one showed up, but he would forget to tell people about the performance. It was like there was always like a little calendar of concerts, and he would always forget to put the concert up and get mad when no one showed up because he didn't tell anyone about it. So always think not only of the song, but try to think of an action plan of what you want to do with the song, how you're going to promote it, what is the story of the song, so that someone else could play it and think about and have that kind of a marketing hook as well as a musical hook. So I think that's something that's often overlooked, and we could be so focused on the creation process, and we could get so granular on every level. But if we forget the basic things of how are we going to tell the story about this song to other people, that's a really easy thing for us as creators to overlook, that the traditional role of a marketing department in a record company was really good at. When a new artist would launch in a classic heyday, 70s and 80s, there was always a marketing hook to go along to introduce the artist. There's always a marketing hook for the new album, a marketing hook for the song in addition to the song. So those two things working in concert, I think a lot of people forget the marketing hook and the marketing plan for it once it's done, because you're so kind of involved with the particular production and writing process and performance. So we'll see what other people say. But I've never had a hit song, so. Okay. All right, so we see just a quick question from Captain Energy Music. Is directed towards Jazz Dude, which you'll probably answer in the next comments or next couple comments. Do you know a way to copy the system drive to a larger drive without doing a full reinstall of my entire life? So I know that Samsung has like a little migration tool that will basically just take your old data on your old drive, and like when you buy a new SSD, you get a license for it, or you used to. I haven't bought a new SSD in a while. And that would basically allow you to migrate all the data from one drive to another drive. Often, if it could be connected via USB, and then just simply replace the drives and boot off that particular drive. So there are utilities for that. So a lot of the hard drive companies do that as a way to make it easier to replace your drive to a larger capacity, newer, more expensive SSD drive. Okay, so Jazzy Limel asks, "Hey Greg, I just want to know, does any of the Yamaha digital mixers work seamlessly with Cubase Pro? Does the mixer act like an interface with Cubase?" So a lot of the interfaces will do that. So like the Yamaha TF will function as a USB audio interface. The larger mixers, and there's a new DM3 which comes in two flavors. And that is a 16-channel USB version and a 16-channel Dante version. So a lot of the larger format consoles rely on Dante technology. And if you're not familiar with what Dante is, it's DANTE. It is basically a protocol for transmitting audio over Ethernet connections. So instead of having to carry huge snakes and copper cables weighing thousands of pounds, most large concerts now we'll get the audio from the stage to front of house via just a single Cat5 cable, a network cable. So it cuts down like immense amounts of weight and like a huge snake, and getting audio to different speakers could all be done over Dante. And then you can connect the Dante to your computer. You could buy a Dante virtual sound card. I think it's like $60-$70, and that is a way to where you just take the audio output from your digital console and you could connect it to your computer via Ethernet and record, I think, up to 64 channels with Dante virtual sound card. If you need to do 128 tracks, you could get a Dante PCIe card, and I think RME may have a Dante USB device as well. It may not do the full bandwidth Dante, but I think it'll do like 56 channels or so. So all of the digital mixers will utilize the Dante network, and then you could just simply capture that into programs, and that's why we make Nuendo Live as a companion piece for capturing audio, and you could do it in Cubase the same way, and those are bundled with the Nuendo Live 3 is bundled with the particular Yamaha consoles. So pretty much they'll work. The lower end models will pass audio over USB. And like the DM3 will function as a control surface as well, basically a Mackie control protocol. And the other larger consoles will pass audio to in front of the computer via Dante. All right, so we have Cubase X checking in from Europe. Thanks for joining us today. And we have Fortnite 15 checking in from France. Thanks for being online. Okay, so we have a question from JB who asks, issue with the arranger track. If I draw a 4-bar part at 1 bar, 4-bar part at bar 1, then draw a 3-bar part inside the 4, I can't start from the first. I have to draw from the 2nd to the 4th, then drag it to bar 1. Bug. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so I'll just add an arranger track. I'll just copy this number of times here. Okay, so we add an arranger track. So we want to draw in a 4-bar part starting on bar 1. So we'll save. So we're going to add our arranger event here. So let's say bar 1 to 5. Okay, and then draw a 3-bar part inside the 4. I can't start from the first. I have to draw from the 2nd to the 4th. So I think So now I have an A and a B section here, and I just drew it in from the first event. So I'll just undo that. So what I just did is I'm just drawing in from beat 1, let's say to measure 4. Let me make sure it says if I draw on a 4-bar part, at bar 1, then draw a 3-bar part inside the 4. I can't start from the first. I have to draw from the 2nd to the 4th and then drag it to bar 1. Bug. So it seems to work for me. Let me know if I did something differently than how you approached it, JB. But it's, and I'll try, here as well. So I'll start, let's say, and I had snap turned off, so let me turn snap on and see if that makes a difference. But it looks like it's kind of working as expected here. So let me just, all right, so try, when you do it, maybe turn snap off. But yeah, so it looks like it's kind of working here. So let me know, maybe toggle snap off and see if that makes a difference for how it's working for you. See, Pablo has a day off today, but he has more drums tomorrow. So. All right, so we see Scooter B just says, hey there, Greg. I tried to download Cubase. I've had a slight problem. How do I renew my license for Steinberg and Cubase both? So maybe if you, so I'm not sure which version that you're downloading. So, if it's Cubase 12, it's going to use Steinberg licensing. So you shouldn't have to renew the license. But if it is like something that's a soft e-licenser, like Cubase Cubase Elements, LE or AI 11 or earlier, you could request a new, and you're moving to a new machine. There is a method for, like request a new soft e-license. It says software license reactivation. If you Google that, so I just request new soft e-license for Cubase. And then you could, go to this website. So if it's like Elements, or lower, and and it's on version 11, you could just go through this process here and requesting a new activation code for a new computer, because that software license can be tied to one particular computer, and if you get a new computer, you may have to request a new activation code. So, but let me know the version number. That would be helpful. See, Soren just says, nice answer, Greg, about the hit song, noted among others. So. All right, so we also see from Scooter B says, also before that, Greg, could you run how you install it and what to do first on it, please? So, what you would want to do is, go to the Steinberg download assistant. So generally you would get a direct a download access code. And this process is kind of changed from version 12 on, so just be aware of that. So here you could log into your same credentials, like your same account and password that you use for your My Steinberg account. So you want to go to your My account and be able to log in directly there. Once you have that, you'll see your product downloads. And at this point, you'll see like Cubase Pro 12. So you'll see like your Cubase version under, one that you have, you'll see this is where you could enter the download access code. And if you don't have the download access code because like maybe you've used it already on a previous install, you could just say, okay, I want to go to Cubase and I want to add Cubase Elements 11, let's say. So I'll just come over here and say, okay, here's my Cubase Elements 11. And at this point, you'll see all the installer files for this. You could just click on Install All, and then within the eLicenser program, if it's on 11 or earlier, you could just put in the particular code right here. You'll see enter activation code. So if you have, if you've reactivated it, you'll get a new code that you could enter there. But that's how you could do the install. So it's changed from 11 to 12 with new licensing. All right, so we have Miguel checking in from Pittsburgh. Thanks for joining us today. I've been so incredibly lost driving around Pittsburgh. Just one or two bridges. Anyway, we're glad you could join us here. All right, so we see a question. Is Steinberg thinking about a successor to the famous CC121? So, the hardware, such as like the UR interfaces, the AXR interfaces, and the CC121 are all kind of designed and produced by Yamaha. So I haven't heard of any particular plans for that. And I think also what Steinberg has done in the MIDI remote functionality is to allow you to have, very similar functionality, kind of utilizing any MIDI remote control surface. So the CC121, I have one that's always right next to my left hand when I'm working with Cubase. Is a wonderful controller. I haven't seen any plans from Yamaha on, designing or releasing a newer, updated version, but I will keep asking because I would like to have one. See, someone just says it's fun to see all the different solutions for getting a hit song, he thinks. So. All right, so we see Nick has to head off. So thanks for joining us, Nick, and we'll see you on Friday. Always wonderful to have you on the live stream. Okay, so we have a question from Miguel. Says, if I may, a question. You import a sample like a kick drum, say, and is there a way to treat it like an event or a region that is a beat or a bar in length for shared copy purposes? Thank you. Okay, so I'll just do a new project, or I'll just mute this. So let's take a So let's say I want to find like a kick sample. So it seems like you want it to be on the timeline. So let's come over here and all right, so let's say I want this kick to be like 4 on the floor kind of thing. All right, so I'm just going to drag this out. All right, and it kind of placed it where the cursor was. So I'm just going to put this onto beat 1. All right, so let's say I want this to be like 4 on the floor. What I would do is maybe, turn the snap on, and at this point, we'll set our snap to beat, or you can set it to bar, whatever you want. I'm going to use the range selection tool and just duplicate. So I'm going to hit Command D and just hold it down. And now we can, I'll turn my project tempo to something more amenable. So once I've just kind of selected, regardless of the length of the sample, like if I duplicate the sample a bunch of times and it's not filling out the particular area, it's not filling in the whole beat or the bar, that doesn't make sense. So maybe select kind of just with the range tool, and if you set it to beat or bar, now when we duplicate and just hold down Control or Command D, it'll just automatically be aligned. So let me know if that makes sense, Miguel. I'm just going to reread the question, make sure I think I answered it okay. Yeah, and so I think that makes sense. And then if you want it, and another cool thing that you could do is, let's say we have this sample used repeatedly. I could just, let's say I want this sample now. I could hold down the Shift key, and if this sample is used multiple times, like while it plays, I'm going to just take this sample, drag it over, and hold down the Shift key. And it'll ask me, do you wish to modify all events that refer to that material? I'll say yes. And now it's just switched out the sample for you. But you could do shared copies in kind of the same way. So let me know if that's helpful, Miguel, for what you want to accomplish. All right. So we see Soren says that he would want a playlist of the greatest songs made, one from each one of us. Can that be made? Difficult choice. What to mention then is best song. But anyway, Jazz Dude, Discord possibility. So, but I think you should specify whether you want it to be a hit song or the best song, because I think those criteria could be much different, and a list would be much different for me. So. Probably the biggest hit was Happy Birthday, in terms of generating money and revenue. Let's see. You see another +1 for the CC121 hardware update. He'd love to have one too. So. All right, so we have Uno Memento just says, I have easy drummer track where I have different drum sounds. How can I separate kick and snare to their individual tracks to make different, say, reverb for them? So I don't have a license of Easy Drummer on this computer, but I'll show you the concept inside of Groove Agent, and I think you could probably do something. I'm sure you could do something similar inside of Easy Drummer. So we'll go ahead and just Start off with a Groove Agent kit. Okay, so okay, so if we wanted to split this out, so let's say I'm playing back this particular pattern here. Okay, I'm sorry, let me just. Sorry, I'll just do it on a new project here real quick. There's too much going on there. Okay, so if I want to be able to split up like different drums from a virtual instrument, all right, let me check, see why. Just check my routing real quick while we're only hearing mono. So check my output routing one more time. Sorry about that. Alright, well, I'll just try it in mono here, but we'll get the same idea. So let's come over here, and I'm going to go in the instrument itself. Like Groove Agent, we do it in the mixer. So I could say I want my kick to go out of output 2 and my snare to go out of output 3. And you may go to your particular mixer and or when you go to the VST instrument here, you'll see Groove Agent, and then if you click here, we could. So if we click kind of at the bottom area here, we could show the outputs. So we could just say at this point, let me clear my throat. All right, so we can say at this point we want to activate outputs. So here you can see all the available outputs. Now how you route it within the particular output. So when you click here, we can see that as we play, I can have my kick. And on this track, I could say, okay, we're going to add an effects channel. All right, so we're going to add our effects channel. And we'll make it a reverb. And we'll make it stereo reverb here. All right, so now I could go to for my kick track, I wanted to, let's say my snare. So I'll just say, okay, let's take this to the reverb. And now I want my kick. And that's how you could do it. But it would be really kind of the same exact process for working, you know. So it would be the same exact process when working with reverb. So there's my stereo problem. All right. So once again, just come over here. And I'll mute this groove agent. So as soon as we play the pattern here, then again, just go to however you get the sounds to different outputs. And if it's a like a beat agent kit, you would just click on the pad itself. But once we have this done, just come over here, set the output. And if we set it from the instrument, it could automatically be added. And then say, okay, I want to go to the kicks here. Then you could just add your different effects to your drums, just like that. All right. So I'm sure Easy Drummer has a very similar thing, and if it's a beat agent kit, we can show you how to do it. Let's see if this beat agent kit or not. So now with the beat agent kit, we would select the instrument pad, and then from the edit we could see and route it to the 32 stereo outs. So all right, so we see Miguel just says, yes, thank you. The range tool is the go-to tool for those purposes. Going to practice it. So yeah, range tool does all sorts of wonderful editing functions. So there's a lot of great stuff you can do very quickly with that. See, Gerald Ely just says, Greg, love the happy birthday song joke. So true. Yeah. So I heard Paul McCartney once is an interesting thing that I think he bought the Georgia State marching band fight song, realizing that every time that they scored a touchdown that it would be played on national TV for enough seconds that it would get royalties for a huge crowd, being that it was a performance in 60,000 people watching in a stadium and then broadcast. That every time that he would, they would score a touchdown, they would play the fight song, the marching band would play, and then he would get money for that, Also, if you get your song performed in a Super Bowl, that's a nice check as well. So I've had some friends who've, had that fortune. It's yeah, Super Bowl is good. like 100 million people, 200 million people watching throughout the world or something ridiculous. So that's a good way to get royalties. But Happy Birthday generated a lot of royalties. All right, wonderful CJ from Secret Studios. So we see, hi Greg, question. Do you know if Steinberg may plan to transition Absolute 4 to Steinberg license, as I want to get access to Groove Agent 5, Retrolog 2, and more. Also into version 5.6. So they're not going to take the version, it's just going to be the latest version of the Absolute. Would be, I think is it Absolute 6? I'll just check. So I don't think that they're going to go back to Absolute 4. So it would be Absolute 6 would give you all that under the Steinberg licensing. I just want to make sure I have my version numbers right. Yeah, so all you'd have to do is upgrade to Absolute 6 from version 4. Let's check what the upgrade price is, and then that would all be under the licensing. So let's say if you wanted to do an update from Absolute 4, so $199, and then you could get the get everything with all the latest versions of all the plugins, plus you get FM Lab, Howling 7, all of that. So I don't think that they're going to go back and do Absolute 4 because it was released like 5 years ago. But the current Absolute 6 would also work with new Steinberg licensing. So we see from Scooter B just says, Greg, I still have version Cubase 12 here. What I really want to know, do I just run the trial first and ask a parent to pay for premium stuff to Cubase 12? So yeah, probably if you could run the trial version first, and tell your parents it's a great career investment. My parents initially loaned me my money for my Cubase, and they lent me $350 for it on Atari, version 2. And I got it my last semester in college. I maybe had like a month left in school, and I actually, the next day I made $500 and paid my parents back, and I had $150 profit just because I was running Cubase for a project. And it's served me well and served many others very well in their musical careers. So it's a good investment to make. So do the whole educational thing if your parents are helping you out financially with that. It's really a wonderful tool to have in your arsenal for creating music and being able to sell your services as an audio engineer or composer, so you don't have to buy a bunch of other third-party tools because so much of it is included. See, John Costigan just says he really dislikes Happy Birthday as a song. You can do better. So it's not if it's a good song, as if it was a hit song. So and generating money. So. All right, so we have Rodham Pick, who's glad to be here. Glad you could make it and join us for today's live stream. See John Costigan giving encouraging words to Gerald Ely. Says he wagers that Gerald could easily write a hit record. Just try writing your new favorite song. That's also great advice. All right, so we see Tommy C just says, hi Greg, I'm working fully again. Yes, what OS on Mac should I use? So generally, I like to use the Mac OS that comes with my machine. I'm like I don't see like a huge difference, for my day-to-day purposes on, updating an OS. I think it often, unless I absolutely have to, I think I'm running Monterey here, but many people are running Ventura without any problems. I'm running Monterey. I generally just kind of, like when my computer comes with an operating system, I try to stay with that operating system. Personally, it's just what I do. I don't need to necessarily, I don't have a lot of spare time to go troubleshooting issues that could be just an OS thing that, made something. And the only benefit of the OS was like the corners on this icon were a little more rounded than square, So I tend to stick with the OS that comes with my machine, but I'm running Monterey. But then I think the current one is Ventura. Try not to be bleeding edge with your operating system because, you may feel like you're a beta tester for the company that's creating the operating system. All right, so we have a question from Scooter B. Greg, when will the Zoom stream be? So we usually do it the last live stream of the month. And this month that will be, I believe, July 28th, Friday, July 28th. So we usually start about 2 hours into the particular live stream. So we will probably go like we usually start at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. So that could be 6 p.m. In UK, 10 a.m. in California. Central Europe, it would be 7 p.m. And at that point, it would, so we usually go for 2 hours, and then the Zoom meetup, which are always a real joy. I look forward to catching up with everyone. We'll usually go for 2 or 3 hours. So. All right, so we see from Shane Jensen, is there a way to quantize a section of the track and not the full track? Okay, so let's say I'm not sure if it's for MIDI or audio, but we'll show both. So we'll start with an instrument track here. All right, so let's say I'll do something a little less rhythmic here. All right, so let's say I was recording some lovely synthesizer parts, and I'm a horrendous keyboard player. So let's say I'm roughly playing to the click. Okay, so let's say now we're listening to it, and so if I have the event selected and I hit Q for quantize, it'll quantize everything in a particular event. If I'm in, let's say, the editor, so I'll just make this a little larger here. So if I'm in this particular editor, I could just say I want to select these notes, and then when these notes are selected, I hit Q, and then these notes aren't affected, and it's only what is selected. So if the event is selected, it's going to quantize all of the MIDI notes within the event, and if we have the event open in an editor, I could select just those particular notes and override the overall event selection. So once I have just these notes selected, it's only going to quantize those notes versus the whole event. So, and if we wanted to do this with audio, let's take a look. right, so let's say I have this, and I think if I wanted to quantize just this part, we'll come over here to the quantize panel. We'll see if everything adjusts. So we'll say, okay, let's do eighth notes and make sure the audio warp is turned on. So only what was selected was quantized. So if we undo that, we can see that these events will change rhythmically. Let me just line this up so we can see it a little easier. So I just split the drum loop with the scissors tool. I select that event. So we're going to quantize this and not this part or this part. So we'll come over and now quantize, and we see that this has shifted, but these remained the same. So we undo, redo. So that's how you can quantize just a portion of a particular event. All right. See Gerald E. Lee just saying to Tommy C about the OS version. So he says Tommy C could run Ventura on his Intel i7, no problems. He also has Cubase Monterey and an i5, no problems. So we see, hi Greg, is it possible to rename files and descriptions of audio simultaneously? So I think it's going to be two separate processes. So let me just come over. I'll just do a quick render in place for this to create a new audio file. All right, let me just... Okay, so let's say if I want to come here, so we can see the file name and the description. So I think Nuendo would allow you to do that. So there is like if you select it in the pool, in Nuendo we could do that, but in Cubase I think it's going to be like a two-step process to do that. But if you if you named the file first to start with, so say name the file first, and if you can type correctly, unlike myself, that as you record, that you could have the description and the name kind of set. But I think it's going to be I know there's some discussion on this going forward, but I know in Nuendo you could do that and have the track name automatically derive from the part name as well. But currently in Cubase I think it's still going to be a two-step process. All right. Let's see, John Koskin just says it was Sir Paul Bot on Wisconsin. So actually not a bad tune for a fight song. So yeah, so clever things like that, can help get royalties. So. All right, so a question from Michael Pierce. Quick question. I'm having a brain freeze. How do I make sure all the handles are available on Very Audio events? Seem to have turned them off on my home rig. Live discovery. Thank you. So really what you need to do is just jump to this project here. Activate it. Okay, so we're here, we're in Very Audio. All right, and we want to see all of the handles. So what you want to do is you'll see in the Very Audio tab, you'll see Smart Controls, and it'll probably default to just show default Smart Controls. And instead of doing that, what you could do is choose to, and now under default Smart Controls, you don't see all the parameters, but it's a little easier. But you want to just choose your Smart Controls and select Show All Smart Controls, and then you have more options available within the Very Audio editor right here. All right, so we see Pablo is just passing on a trick. Says when using render in place, when you want two sounds to go to mono channel, is to send one full left and one full right, then split the track into two mono channels. So. Okay, so we see from Scooter B, it just says, Greg, how to add 1 to 2 parts to a kick snare. Both. All right, so I'm not sure if it's, so we could think of like one sound at a time per track. So let's say if I wanted to come over here, let's go to my media bay to loops and say, okay, I want to just add. So if you're just dealing with samples, so let's say, okay, I want this sample here, and I want this to be on beat 2, and I want maybe a kick drum. Do something less obnoxious. Okay, so now if I want to take this, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to put this on beat 1 and beat 2, and then I could take the range of both of these that are kind of lasting, so we'll select that range, and I could duplicate just this particular range. Let me just and then you could just kind of create more beats like that. So if you want a simple, and then you can say, okay, I want this to just repeat, and we'll see if this is going to be, and then at this point I could just say, okay, I want this to snap. So now and then if you like that particular pattern, I could just come over here and duplicate away. And then as I change my tempo, we could so let me know if that's kind of the approach you wanted to do it. You could also, if you have a blank, like if you have a Groove Agent kit loaded up, and there's lots of just amazing Groove Agent kits that come with the program, but if you create just kind of a blank part, that we could come over and just like within the drum program here. So I'm going to use the sounds of Groove Agent, and then I could just say, okay, let's take this and I'll play. Okay, so I want to start off with, you could listen to the particular sounds and say, okay, I want a kick. And you could just kind of program in drums directly, right on the particular event. So you could program it MIDI or program samples and just place it on the audio as well. All right, so we have Jay from Secret Studios who's asking, Greg, would you be so kind as to show how we might take a third-party audio effect plugin and target it to act within a specific frequency range on the audio event? Okay, so let's say we'll take a look. I'll just put it on this track here. So we'll just go ahead and, so we'll have some different vocal parts.
Na 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 na.
All right, let me just drop it down tempo a little bit here.
Na 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 na.
So let's say I wanted to take like so this is feeding into a reverb. So we could, so we open up this particular channel, we can see that this is going to open the reverb. And if we wanted to go to our reverb channel here, we can see that as soon as we go over to our reverb, I'm going to now just put in like a plugin that just kind of will block frequencies. Imager is a good one. So I only want the reverb to process maybe the high frequencies, let's say. So I'm just going to solo this frequency range. So as we do this, all these other bands will be basically frozen out, and we're going to have the reverb from 5K up. So we could, as soon as we, just listen to that particular vocal, we could just have, so going to the reverb return again, so make sure. And I'll just do this. I'll start with the brand new delay. All right, so we'll take this particular track. Let me just get the sends here. Okay, so we have no effects. All right, let's see if I just... See, I put it on now. All right, let me. I'll just revert this quickly. Start fresh. Okay. Okay, so we'll come over here. I'm going to take away the send effect, so it will be dry. So we'll listen to it again. So I want to add a delay. So I'm going to add an effects channel to the particular track. So let's do a mono delay. All right, and we'll make it like a dotted quarter.
I started losing sight of place.
Okay, I'll just take my feedback down so I have.
What dimension am I in?
Okay, so I want to take the delay and kind of filter out the frequencies in the delay. So what I'm going to do now is open up the effects channel track on the delay. I'm going to move this delay down because once we send to this effects return channel, we could have up to 16 different plugins stacked. So if I say, let's get to the imager. Okay, and we're going to solo, let's say the mid range here.
In the air.
So now the reverb is only going through these frequencies.
Where is home? Are we there yet?
So if I take this off, we're going to hear the delays.
I feel the weight.
Now when we have our delay, it's only going to be on this particular frequency range. And we could change the frequency range, so we want more lower mids in it.
Na 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 na.
Then if we wanted to full range, so now as it goes on, I'll just rewind here a little bit. So it's going to full range delay, and now we turn this on, and it's going to filter out the delays and only have these frequencies feed the effects. So we hear that it's only processing the effects through that particular plugin. So basically we're kind of applying a filter before that effect kicks in. All right, so we see a question, is there a way to do a track version which includes automation, curve changes, VST setting changes, MIDI insert, effect changes? Sorry for the double message. No problems on double message. Sorry if I missed it earlier. So so when we're doing track versions, we could think of it as we want the track to be the same. So it's going to utilize the same automation. And like the other like the VST settings, the MIDI insert changes, those would be for the track. So the intention when we use like a track version is that we could have kind of the same basic settings but different media or different events on that particular track. So when we come over here, let's say, okay, I want, I had this idea for a particular, drum event. So I see that, okay, if I come here I could go to a track version, I have a drum pattern that's laid out for me here. So generally, like, the automation and the track settings are intended to be the same so that we could so we could go between different, takes or different performances and not have to change all those things. So if you wanted the ability and flexibility to change between those different settings, maybe right click and duplicate the track, then you could just, mute the different tracks that you don't want to hear and have different automation and MIDI plugin settings on duplicate tracks. But the track versions, it's really not for the track and all the track settings, but rather it's for just the actual events on the track, to have alternate events, different versions of events on the same track. All right, so we see, hi Greg, from InDrop. Is it possible to use the range selection tool in the piano editor? I want to duplicate a drum part selection while keeping the same proportional position in the next bar. Okay, so you can't necessarily do it like in the drum editor or the piano roll editor, and I've kind of been lobbying for this for years. But one trick that you can do is, let's say, like I have a synth bass part here, and this is all within, let's say I have this pattern within a particular measure. So I get rid of these notes and this. So what happens if we duplicate the selected events and I wanted to retain the same position within the bar? If I duplicate from within the editor, it just kind of places it directly after the next note, which isn't what you want to do, what it sounds like. What you can do is open up the in-place editor. Now I know that this is a workaround, but if you hit Control or Command plus Shift and the letter I, so Control, Command, Shift plus the letter I for in-place editor. You could also have an icon. If you go to your track control settings, right click, go to the track control settings, and then you could have the in-place editor as visible, and then you could open that up. So now that we have the in-place editor, this allows us to edit the MIDI data on the project window. So if I wanted to grab my range tool, so I'm just going to grab my range selection tool here, and now I select the range of the measure. So at this point, let me just clean up the endings here so we could snap my range selection here to the beat. So now when I duplicate, I could have the space before and after. So if you want to use the range tool on MIDI data, I know it's a workaround, Command or Control plus Shift and the letter I, and then you could do the range selection, and that opens and closes the editor as the default keyboard shortcut. Then you could do range editing for MIDI data within the particular event, and that will retain its position within the range, the selected range. See John Costigan sharing to Michael Pierce, he was sleeping on a screened-in porch in Minnesota and heard a badger outside. Terrifying is the operative term. So I haven't had any badger experiences. All right, we see Uno Momento is that the President Biden is going to Finland tomorrow. So he's going to stop by, say hello. Tell him you like the Club Cubase live streams. So. All right, so we have a question from Ace Amadeus. So glad you can make it today. Ace says, hi Greg, hope you're doing well. I upgraded to the latest Hallian. Is there a way to download the individual sound banks in sections? Calculation says it will take a day and a half to download. Thanks. So once you go to the Steinberg Download Assistant, we'll just open this up here. All right, so we'll come over here. So it'll probably show up under your My Products once you've activated the license. But I'm going to go to VST Instruments plugins, and let's just go to Hallian. All right, so really, all right, so we see it's one big. Let me just take a look at. So we see the Tails and FM Lab. Let's take a look, see if there's usually like a website download. Let's see if it's broken down into sections there. Here, I'll just go to support. And if you get to downloads, we'll see sometimes it might be broken down. Yeah, so it looks like it is just a one big file. So yeah, I might just leave it on overnight. So I know like sometimes they've broken down some of the installers based on different ones, but it looks like Halion isn't set up like that for the install. Sorry about that, Ace, but. So we see Michael Pierce's question about the smart controls. Says, thank you, just drew a complete blank on that for the past 20 minutes. Sometimes those menus are quite small. So, yeah, keeps me employed. So. All right, so we have a question. Greg, I'm pretty unsure. I'd like to know if it is possible to install two different Cubase licenses which have two different license systems in it. Example, those who have a dongle and online activation. So yeah, it's just whenever you, so you can install, you could have, different, I still have programs that use eLicenser and versions that use eLicenser in conjunction with products that are using the Steinberg licensing model. So you could definitely do that, and it's just whatever licensing is needed for the version you start. If as long as it sees it, then you're fine. So you could have any number of different license management systems, where it's iLock, eLicenser, Steinberg licensing, NI system, Arturia system, Wave system, etc. All right, so we see Sable Winters, and she just has a question about messing around with spectral layers. Pro 9 have separated an old mix down. All layers have bleeding. How to strip out bleeds per instrument layer and clean. Also, what's time fade, composite view. So sometimes, that's one of the things that version 10 has improved upon is in the separation. But, and if you want to see what the composite view was, so I'll just come over here, we'll run this in spectral layers, so it kind of gives you more of a contrast view. So when we want to come over here, we could just say, okay, so we can see that we have, and this is kind of based upon the track color. And if we kind of look at this, we could think of this again as kind of taking the audio waveform on its side. And what composite view allows us to do is we can kind of see where, a bit more cleanly where the most energy is for the particular frequency ranges. So that's what the composite view allows you to see. All right, so we have a question from Secret Studios. It says, regarding send effects, if a channel is sent to an effect, is a dry signal still present in a channel, essentially presenting a duplication of the signal, or is it all made wet? All right, so let's say we go back to this vocal example here. Okay, so as we... So right now, what we're doing is, I'll just show this in the mix console. All right, so we're going to have our track selected here, and we see that we have our effect send. So as soon as I take this particular track, and I'll just put these, kind of just butt them all next up to each other here. So let me just switch this to shuffle mode. All right, so now that let's say so you see that what we're going to do is this fader here is going to send more of the sound of this, and we could think of it as almost a parallel path, like an alternate path. This is still perfectly the same, but what this is doing is as we move this more to the right, it's going to send more of the signal into the effects track, and the effects track is going to process the delay, and the output of that delay is going to be fed, in this case, to our master output. So as we watch this, we'll see no metering going on, and we'll do this in the mix console. We'll make it bigger here so we could see. So this is our channel that we're listening to. All right, so I'll turn this off, and we'll restart. So now as I bring this over, I turn it on.
What dimension am I in?
And if I bring less of it over, we can see that the send levels.
In the air, where is home? Are we there?
And as I take this level down,
I feel the way.
so if we come over here and mute the effect, the original signal is still here, unaffected, but we're just sending it to our effect. And then the effect blends that signal together. And the amount that we have here, this is what is blending from the dry signal all the way to sending more of that signal directly to the effect. In the old days, this was actually often sending this signal to an audio line fed to a speaker in a different room with a microphone, and that's why you would send it to a different room or sending it to the effect. And this is still playing perfectly as it was, but you're just incorporating and blending more of this signal in and sending how much of that blend is dry or wet by the amount that the effect send is being utilized. Okay, we see Patrick at Mandeville A says today's live stream is really great. Thank you, Greg. So it's only great when we have everyone participating and asking great questions that everyone can learn from. So, but yeah, I think we had a lot of great questions today, and thanks to all the attendees for that, for making it such a great live stream. All right, so you see, hi Greg, I'm editing audio that needs to be cut up into separate words and phrases. Is there a way to automatically have a clip set to the start and end points to the audio? So often, let's take maybe kind of more of a spoken, like a dialogue thing. I'll just do new project here. Let me just import. Or I'll just show something. We'll try some spectral layers with this as well. So we'll come over. I'll just import a video file. Okay, so as we listen to this, let's say, all right, so we have some music and dialogue.
This is Hamburg. an independent historic harbour city. Hamburg prides itself on its cosmopolitan society and a thriving young adult community.
All right, so what I want to do is take this file and let's split the, let's try extracting the dialogue out of it. All right, so we'll just try taking the vocals out. It's a couple minutes here. And then what we want to do is to almost take each word or phrase and be able to kind of cut it up. We'll show a couple techniques for that. All right, about 40% done. Never tried it on this particular track, but we'll see how it turns out. So you just see a nice comment from Miguel. Just says, wow, so much frustration eliminated. Wish I would have found this channel sooner. So yeah, and we do this on Tuesdays and Fridays, just so you're aware, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And there's 3 years of live streams that you could see on the Cubase YouTube channel, as well as if you want to search for topics, go to cubaseindex.com. So we're glad that the live stream has been helpful. Okay, so we're just about done. So let's go ahead and just listen to see how it did with
many beautiful spots to enjoy urban life.
Okay, so now it's taken where we had just that particular file. So now if we want to do, depending on how much you want to kind of split up phrases. So if it's, and we'll go back to the question. I think it's from Mike Reinhardt. You want to cut it up into separate phrases. So, one way of doing it is just to select and come over here and hit Shift X. And then that could automatically kind of cut the different phrases. I'm going to turn off this snap and I can say, okay, I want that as a phrase, Shift X. And we could just come over here and cut up the particular audio as well. So you can say, okay, this is a particular phrase. Now, one technique that a lot of people could also use if we wanted to do particular editing, and just to listen to this.
Hamburg, an independent historic harbour city. Hamburg prides itself on its cosmopolitan
dialogue that was
society,
extracted
a thriving young
from
adult community
this was all
with
together
many
before.
beautiful spots to enjoy urban life. Having a long and exciting musical history, Hamburg has always been home to an amazing diversity of music. And when the sun...
So you can see we extracted that particular dialogue out. So if I want to now, I'll just take this. So Shift X is a great tool for that. You could also set up, I'll just render this as a separate file for editing purposes. So let's say I want to come over here to, and you can see kind of the uses of spectral layers with this. Like let's say you wanted someone who had more of an American accent, that you could just now replace the dialogue and match that up with this particular event. So
This is Hamburg.
so now let's say I want to edit this particular audio file. Now we could use an area in the sample editor also called regions. Okay, so and once I come over here, we could just say
Hamburg.
I want to select this particular region. So we could play this region. So we'll just come back over here.
This is Hamburg.
All right, and then we could say, okay, I just want to add this region. So we'll say this is Hamburg. Okay.
An independent historic harbor city.
Okay, I'm going to use that. So independent. So you could, and even spectral layers, we could extract the, so here's something even scarier with spectral layers that we could now come over and say, let's grab our, if I wanted to take this particular file, we could transcribe it as well, even if you wanted to. So, but we'll come back to that. So, but at this point, we could just select and add regions. So if you wanted to be able to, like if you're doing an interview and you realize that, you wanted to cut out all of the questions and make it sound like, the person is answering without the benefit of a particular interview, and you wanted to edit out all the person asking questions were like, tell us about your first project you did, and you want the person to, as you're doing the interview, to answer, well, my first project was this, where the answer could stand without the benefit of hearing the question for the viewer. We could just select these particular different regions and add them. Then when we go into our pool window, we could see that we have the audio file and we'll have all of our regions kind of set up. So these are still sections of the particular audio file. But at this point, if I wanted to turn these into individual files, I could select the regions, and we'll see this plus sign indicating that this audio file has defined regions. And then we could just say, let's go to processes or to audio and bounce selection. It'll ask us where we want to save the files to. We'll open. And now all of these can be converted directly into audio files here. Like I had the this is Hamburg selected. So we could take these regions and right click, go to audio, bounce selection, come over here, and then all of the individual regions have now been split up into smaller audio files. So, try to just, if you want to take just that region there, you can cut, you can come over here and just do it directly within the sample editor, create regions. So you could create kind of, if you're looking more for doing independent events for editing, this is good. If you wanted to be able to split these into individual audio files easily after the fact, think of using regions within the sample editor. So let me know if that makes sense for you. And again, that's from, I think it was Mike Reinhardt. All right, so Eric C asks, hi Greg, could you tell us what is the control room? So when we're doing a particular project, the control room is going to allow us to have kind of an independent monitoring path. So many times when we're working on a particular project, we may have like a master fader in the mixer. So let's say if we're looking at this particular project, we have kind of our channel settings. Then I could have everything kind of going to like my master fader here. And many people, if you're using headphones or powered speakers, which are very common, will simply come over here and adjust this and use this as their monitoring volume. So what we could do instead of using this, because if you have your speakers turned up really loudly, what the control room, to compensate for that, people may have their master fader down low. So if we listen to this, we can see that the output level is going to be determined and affected by the master fader settings here. So what the control room allows us to do is to not affect the gain structure of the mix, but just to have the control room value, which is just for monitoring. Now, if we have more than one pair of speakers, we could also just come over here and go to the monitors, and we could switch between different speakers, and these speakers and the audio connections just simply utilize the audio connections on your audio interface. And we could set up multiple speakers, and each of these would just need to have a separate output from your audio interface to feed into. So the control room allows you to, and then you can say, oh, I want to listen to something off of my iPod or from my iPad. So I could just have this even set up as an external source. So you can say, okay, I just now have my iPad connected into inputs of my audio interface, and then we could just listen to our external source. This also allows us to say, while it's playing, I want to go to my down mix presets. How's this sound? When I want to monitor in mono or stereo. So we can do down mixing right there as well. So those are a couple of uses of the control room, which could be really helpful. And there's lots more you could do with it. Headphone mixes and setting up listen bus, all sorts of stuff. All right, so we have a question from Spike Williams. I'm working on a project with a PT user, anticipating being in a studio with him. What's the best way to ensure I have my VSTs and libraries available in an unfamiliar studio? So generally what a lot of people do is just, realize that, other programs aren't as capable if you're doing a lot of virtual instruments, and the virtual instrument capabilities can be limited in comparison to Cubase. Some people will have all of their sample libraries on an external drive and be able to, move the external drive. So if they install a trial version or install a plugin, that external drive could, have all of the samples. A lot of people will just bring a laptop so that they have their tools, everything organized exactly how they're used to it, so they can find their files quickly. So, I know many people, it's very common just to bring your desktop or your laptop in the studio. Then you could have access to everything, where it's at. So you don't have to sit there while you're paying for studio time. It's like, why isn't this thing a library? Where's the license for this? So that would be kind of probably the most fail-proof method, is just to bring your CPU with you. All right. See, Jay from Secret Studios says he's going to start using FXNs more, and he feels like he's graduating from 2nd grade to 3rd grade. So, all right. See, Michael Pierce says, well, if Greg is a professor, we all have a long way to go. So I'm just an Oompa Loompa in a world of Willy Wonkas. So you guys can all do it. So you just see a comment to John Costigan to Secret Studios. Says all VST3 effects have built-in sidechaining. I have to be more patient with myself too. You can only use what you know and never be afraid to ask questions. So yeah, VST3 has the ability of doing sidechain on plugins, but not all plugins utilize the functionality. So just a heads up on that. But just take little steps. And if you were learning how to talk, or if you were learning a new language or learning how to play a new instrument, you're not going to be a master of it immediately. It just takes time, a little bit of effort, and once you understand the logic of things, then you can grow very quickly. I've just made more mistakes before other people have. And I could, and I kind of approach learning stuff like that. When I approach teaching stuff, it's like, what held me up in it when I was trying to figure it out. And, and I'm in kind of a unique position that, I try to think of how Cubase works for everyone else. And not just me, whereas people have their workflows and this is exactly what they want to do and how to get from A to B. So all right, so we see just a question. Hi, I can wait Auto Composer in next versions of Cubase. So if you're kind of seeking an AI tool that says, give me all the sounds that will make me sound like Drake, or to make me sound like Bach if he played guitar in 1966, I wouldn't expect that in the next version of Cubase, but we're seeing a lot of refinement of algorithm stuff like we just heard in spectral layers. That type of stuff is very, there's a lot of very, intelligent stuff. I'm not sure if it's artificial or a lot of people put a lot of effort into thinking about it to kind of get functionality that people often attribute to artificial intelligence. Seeing our comment about the UNDO benchmark for a professorship. Yeah, one time I spoke at a college. It was great. They're like, yeah, you'd be awesome when you retire to become a college professor, except, everyone would learn everything in 2 hours and they would all buy Cubase. So, all right. Always wonderful to see Lawrence Koch checking in from Rhode Island. Glad you can make it today. Okay, so Mike Reinhardt just asks, that makes sense, but I was wondering if you split a clip where there is silence, can you get the start and end points to auto set to the beginning and end of the clip you just split? So let me see if I still have that file up. Okay, so one of the things we could do is, let's say I haven't done, is just to set, if you go to audio, so if you want to get rid of kind of the silent regions, like in this clip, if we go to audio to, I think it's under advanced. To advanced, there is a detect silence function. So you could set the threshold. And so we could just say, okay, I want to take this particular clip and, we could say, okay, I want to set my threshold. Let's say the minimum open time, we'll make it 200 milliseconds. And now, we could obviously kind of tweak the settings here. But just to kind of show you, then it will get rid of the silent parts. So if you want to, get rid of silent regions that didn't have area, and then have the start and end automatically done like that. So let me know if that's helpful, Mike. Sorry for misunderstanding. All right. So we see, as I experiment with, this question from Secret Studios, as I experiment with sound crafting and listen to output from different D to A converters, I see videos where mastering engineers switch. Which appliance would I look for to switch between converters while outputting to the same monitors? I have no idea what to search for. So often, if you're switching converters, it's often like a mastering desk is kind of often utilized for that, and that will allow you to, we can think of it as almost like a hardware version of the control room. and that could allow you to switch converters and switch, and maintain to different speakers. So it's more of almost a routing matrix than anything else. But they can be very expensive because usually you're not needing to do that for unless you're in a particular mastering environment. So if you look at like different mastering studios, they often have and I think even something like Grace Designs has like their monitor control, which may allow you to switch converters as well. I know you can switch between different monitoring setups, but that might be something to look at, like the Grace control. Okay, so we see, thank you for your response. Last question. What is the best way to delete unused media and remove the missing files notification when I open a project? So, generally, let's come here and just do a new project. Create empty, and I'm just going to put it into a new folder. We'll just put it on desktop so I could have a messy desktop. Okay. Okay, so now I want to so I recorded that, and let's say I want to remove that. I'm going to add 4 more audio tracks. Okay. All right, and we'll try this. We'll save it as a delete test. Okay, so at this point we want to look at our pool window. We'll see that we have these files in the trash. So these are the files that we recorded. These are ones that we erased. So let me go ahead and I'm going to empty the pool, or empty the trash. So I'll come here. And we'll empty trash. Okay, so at this point I'm going to erase, and then we're going to call this save as delete test empty trash. Okay, so I'm going to close this particular project, and let's open it again and see if we get the message. So get to our desktop. All right, so we have our missing connections, and then we don't get the missing files message. So make sure that, like, in your pool, once you've erased the events, they'll go into the trash. Try to empty the trash and see if that works. It seemed like it did the trick for me. All right, so we see Mike Reinhardt says, yeah, I think that was the trick I was looking for with the split silence. Thanks, by the way. I remember meeting you a few times back in the Atlanta Cubase users group. I miss going down to Atlanta and hang out with Fred and Sir Robert. Sir Robert's off and on the live streams as well, but thanks for mentioning that. It brings many fond memories. All right, and I know we had a quick question that was kind of mailed in about how to enter in notation with the mouse. So let's get to that. So I'm just going to add just a quick instrument track. And I'm going to start with kind of a blank event. So I'm going to come over here and we will open our score editor. So we'll just come over. Now, one of the tricks gets to be always kind of realizing what your particular grid settings are when you want to enter in with the mouse. So we can grab our note tool, and we can see that when I come over here, we have our quantize settings. So right now, I have my quantize set to eighth note. So my note here musically is an eighth note. If I have a quarter note selected as my quantize value, it'll be my note head changes accordingly. So what happens many times is, and I'll just put this into a quick page mode so we can see it a little easier. And I will just, let's say I want to put in a particular half note. So I'm going to come over here, put in a half note. So what a lot of times, and if I just click, now I could, as I click, it's only going to snap. I can't really put notes in between of our quantize value, and you obviously use keyboard shortcuts for this, but let's say as we go over to this bar, I want to put in quarter notes. So as I click, now one of the things is, as you kind of hover over, just look at the position. So you'll see that I could go to as I move the mouse over, at this point, you just want to make sure that you have the correct rhythmic value set. And then we could say, okay, I want to just come over, and I'll just kind of slide over. And as we go to enter in different events, that it could just automatically snap based on the particular value. And there's even some different settings. You could have little kind of guides as you go to enter in particular notes as well. But just, it's always, what happens a lot of times is people want to put in, they have their quantize set to 16th notes, and they go to put in, let's say, a half note. So let's say if we come over, and they want to put in a half note, they may actually they select half note here, and let's say this isn't tied together, that they may put a half note in, not on the 16th note. So something to be aware of when entering in notation with your mouse. So just kind of check the particular snap settings and quantize settings, and then you could just simply have that automatically. And you could even see kind of the editing overlay. So let's say if I want to put in eighth notes, I could just kind of click here, and we'll see visually where the different eighth notes will fall. So if you want to just come over here and say I want this note as a note on the and of 4, I could just do that, and we see this grid. So just by having this particular note editing overlay, you could also enable right there. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions. We only had one question mailed in, and you could always email questions to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Let's see if there's any more questions that will sneak in. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. We hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. If you've learned something new, make sure that you actually hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Again, we do these on Tuesdays and Fridays, unless there's a holiday. Last week we moved it for 4th of July in the United States. But generally, as a rule of thumb, it will be on Tuesdays and Fridays, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. All right. We see Lawrence Koch just saying hello from Rhode Island. Thanks for being on today, Lawrence. All right, we'll see. We'll give it another minute, see if there's any more questions. There's usually about 20 to 30 seconds between from when I speak to when you guys hear me. So we'll give it a little bit of time, see if there's any more questions. And thank you for all the wonderful questions that everyone has asked today. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And again, hit the like button if you've learned something new. Tell your friends. And so appreciative that everyone spent part of their morning, evening, or afternoon learning more about Cubase with me today. And I hope that, everyone has, again, picked up some new tips and that you're able to make your Cubase and make music a bit easier in the future. So see if there's any more questions. I'll give it another 30 seconds. If not, we'll wrap up. Let me see. All right, so let me just see, like a whole flurry of notes, kind of different ones came in. Let's see if this is... All right. We see Secret Studios just asking if Steinberg wants to sponsor his first mastering desk. So if you sponsor our first mastering desk, we'll get you one. All right, so we see a quick question. Can I number audio events of a track? So if we have like a number of different audio events, so let's say if we come over here and let's say if I just record in and out and I have like these tracks armed, I kind of punch in. That any of the events that we could come right over here and we could see the event names. So if you wanted to give them names, I'm not sure. So we could just rename each of the events just by selecting it in the info line. All right, so we see, thanks Greg, longtime Pro Tools user and adapting. Can you click on various audio regions and hit the space bar to play? Or do you need to hit L and then the space bar shift option to play at the clip region? So if you have a mode here, so we go to under transport, if you go to use video file as edit mode, and let me just get it on a project where you can hear. So now as I activate, once I have that mode enabled, so let's say if I click here, then I could select the event and then hit play, and then it'll go directly to that particular event. So again, that's under transport. Use video files edit mode, and then you can select the event, and as you select the event, the playhead will go directly to the beginning of that. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We're at our 4 hours. I want to thank everyone for a lovely live stream. Thank you for all the great questions, and we will see everyone back on Friday. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and thanks for all the wonderful questions. Goodbye.